Hey everyone, it's Jenny Fennig here, welcoming you to another episode of Coach Magic. We have Fran Gallaher here today as part of our Luminary series. I am so excited to have this conversation with Fran. We are talking about your intuition, and we are going to have the most incredible conversation today. I just know it. I can feel it. My intuition is speaking to me very loudly and very clearly. Let me tell you about Fran, and then we're going to dive into the conversation. Fran Gallaher is an intuitive leadership coach working at the intersection of spirituality, psychology, and the practical. Fran assists executives of seven-figure businesses to make better decisions using the power of intuition to access critical and otherwise inaccessible information, drive innovation, increase confidence, especially regarding their executive hires, and avoid leadership fails. This is so cool, Fran. I have to share this piece of your background. From a childhood populated by non-physical beings, including a knight in full armor, who stood outside her bedroom that only she could see, to the more than 30 years that Fran has studied spiritual philosophy, depth psychology, and a variety of esoteric practices. Fran uses intuition to bring through information for her clients, quickly establishing rapport to shorten the coaching process and make it extraordinarily personal, powerful, and most importantly, effective. Welcome to Coach Magic, Fran. Thrilled to have you here.
Jenny, I think you read that better than anyone has ever read it, and you made it sound pretty good. Thank you.
It is a skill, especially when I really like what I'm reading. The night standing outside your door, tell us more about that. That to me was light bulbs were going on and off, and I'm so fascinated by that.
Well, I am still also fascinated by that. So one day I was taking care of my oldest grandson as an infant, and I took a little nap because the baby was asleep, and I had this vision that that night was placed there to protect me, and that I have always had a protector. And I had a marriage that did not work out. It lasted 25 years, and I suddenly saw that that man was my next protector. So I think that I'm not. I said something about the practical in that bio, but I have come to the practical with a lot of reluctance, and I think my guides and angels and the good Lord knew that, and so made sure I had a protector, Jenny.
Yes, that's what this conversation and this work is all about, is knowing that we are protected, knowing that we have forces that are for us. There are more forces that are for us that can ever be against us. And when we can work in those realms and trust that, that's when we really activate our fullest power. And yet so many of us don't know that. We weren't raised in that way. It's not what we were taught. And then we had to figure it out for ourselves. So how did you figure this out for yourself? How did you know that you had this and this was available and that you could then utilize these tools to help others?
Wow. Well, that's a big question. So long ago when I was a child, I had inner sight fully developed, so I could see things with these eyes. I also, I was raised in a household where there was abuse and neglect. And the bad part was that I spent a lot of time with my younger brother. We're two of seven in a playroom, and our mother did not interact with us. My mother would not allow me to have a nice little chat or ask questions or anything. How you shut a child down from asking questions, I don't know. But the good part, though, was that there was no one to tell me that there was not a knight in armor standing outside my bedroom. And then my dad found me entertaining, and he would ask me about what he thought was my active imagination at the dinner table. So I told him I saw into worlds. I still don't really know what it was I could see or how I could possibly explain it. I had no words for this as a child. I could see into this one boy's life. And my dad asked me the name of the boy, but if you are in the head of someone, which is what I was experiencing, unless somebody calls that person the name when you're present, you don't know their name. So I never knew his name. And I can still see where he lived and aspects of his life. One day he got hit by a car and it broke his arm. And after that, I couldn't see into his life anymore. And I don't know why. As I grew up, my mother was very, very destructive toward me. And I thought that if I shut my emotions down, that she couldn't hurt me. So shutting your emotions down, everyone, it does not work. What it did was shut me down to myself. And by the time I was in my mid-20s, I was bereft. I had no coping skills. I was just, and I had a mentor starting at age 13. Her name was Mary, and she's a lot of why I'm still here on this planet. And she was very exotic. She painted with oils. And one day when I was 13, I had these Coke bottle glasses and braces and this hair that I didn't know what to do with. And she said, "Darling, once you have taken a second lover, you need to learn to call all of them darling." She was completely out of the realm of suburban St. Louis. I still am feeling so grateful. But she also taught me some things about metaphysics and spirituality. And they were there then for me in my 20s to return to. So I began a path of rehabilitating myself emotionally, spiritually, psychologically. I had already spent many years in therapy to deal with my childhood. And I did therapy that turned into spiritual teaching. And I began to rehabilitate my intuition. Now, at the same time, I got work as a technical writer. I learned to write step-by-step user's guides for hardware and software. So my joke is that I'm the only intuitive who is also logical. And I began to think that what I did intuitively and in terms of learning meditation and various skills, that it could be taught in the same step-by-step manner that the guides were written in. So I began teaching, and I was asked to become a faculty member for something called the Program in Intuition from the Kaiser Institute. So I taught the heads of Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, the VA, the Centers for Disease Control, executives from the Mayo Clinic, and many corporations. I had no idea that the man who had been my student, his father was, called himself a healthcare futurist. He's the late Dr. Leland Kaiser. And he was a high-end consultant to businesses, especially hospitals and healthcare organizations. And so I ended up, most people in the program, many would make me their coach because I was the least weird of the faculty members, perhaps not the most gifted, but I was very gifted. And because I had worked in the corporate world, people felt comfortable with me.
You spoke their language somewhat.
Yes. So the Program in Intuition acted like a feeder for my business, but everything came to a screeching halt in the 2008-2009 recession. And so I had no business skills. I did not maintain contacts with people. You know, I just didn't know what I was doing. And I fell from grace in my own life. And I've been coming back ever since, Jenny.
Wow. What a journey. What a ride. I mean, there's so much to unpack there. I mean, that was a gift. This program of intuition, you were able to be a part of that and share your gifts and your skills and what you see and what you're able to do. You just got clients naturally from being there because, well, they were there, they needed help, and you were a perfect person. But a great takeaway for our audience is that sometimes that goes away. This organization, this place that you're doing great work, they cease to exist because the economy, because they retire, who knows what. And I think it's so important for us women, especially women in business, to remember that we have this power within us, and knowing business skills, knowing how to have a setup and be able to take your own clients and take money online and have your systems and your agreements and in all of that, that's your power, because you're not putting all of your power in some institution's hands that could just go poof one day. And we're seeing that now. Like, this is a wild time, 2025. I mean, oh my goodness, every day. Well, gosh, this whole organization, governmental organization, is now being disbanded. 500,000 people are being let go. You know, these headlines that are big and extreme and happening. It's a reminder for all of us that when you know what that next move is, when you know how to have great clients, when you know how to go and speak on a podcast, this is what I work with a lot of my clients on. One just recently said, oh my gosh, I'm getting invited on all these podcasts now. How do I speak on a podcast? You know, it's when you understand, like, you can learn this. It's really not that hard. You just could have somebody guide you along, a coach or a mastermind, you know, people who have your back. Then you realize that no matter what's going on out there, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay, which is really what our intuition is telling us all along anyway. And so it just feels like we're crossing all of these powerful points together in this conversation. I want to ask you, Fran, and I have to tell everyone who's watching, Fran and I discussed this before we went live, that Fran and I are connected now through a mutual connection of ours. I've known James also. James, if you're watching, hi. I've known James for decades. He was a mentor to me, as Fran just mentioned, you know, having someone significant in your journey who really helped you. You know, they really show you the way. Thank goodness for mentors. Thank goodness for those who see something in you and they plant a seed. So James planted a seed with me when I was still in college. And he said, Jenny, you've got to go to New York City to do an internship. He was a year older than me. And I listened to James. I said, well, James said it. It must be true. So I went to New York City for an internship, and that decision changed my life for the better. And now Fran has a connection with James, and James told me about Fran. And I said, well, if James says it, Fran's awesome, it must be true. And so Fran's now here having this conversation with us. And I'm just so grateful. And I want to remind everybody tuning in that life is wild and there are amazing people in this world. And so keep your amazing people close, and always know that you could meet someone today who is going to change your life. You could meet someone who's going to share something with you that you needed to hear that today. So James sent me some info about you, Fran, and I want to go into some of these ideas that I know you are an expert with, and talk about what is the number one way to access information when we are in these places of doubt and confusion. I hear this a lot. And again, when we have this chaos happening around us, which that's kind of always the case, but there's times when it feels amplified, like now. What is that way that you would counsel someone, or you would coach them to really move beyond the doubt, move beyond the overwhelm, and access that place of truth and power and intuition?
Well, it's hard to say a number one way, because there's more than one. So when I work with someone, I'm going to help you determine which of your senses are active in the inner planes, in your inner world. So once you know what senses are bringing you intuition, you know what to pay attention to.
Okay.
So the one that is perhaps the most bulletproof, non-arguable, we could say, is the felt sense from the body.
Okay.
So for instance, yesterday there was an event that I was going to go to yesterday evening, or experience. I wasn't going to go. And I woke up in the morning And it started feeling as if the energy was draining out of that event. And I chose what I was going to wear, but I sort of migrated into something that I would not wear in the evening. And I thought, well, it must be that I'll change, you know? But as the day went on, I knew that this wasn't going to happen, but it was a felt sense. That's what I was tracking. So, one of the ways I think of this is checking with, what do I have energy for? I thought she froze.
Do you believe what just happened?
I thought you froze.
Well, it was when you were talking about the felt sense, and then boom. I go, this, you can't make this stuff up. This is so carry on. And my camera's doing this interesting, I don't know, zoom in, zoom out. I feel like intuition is just in the room right now, but the felt sense, Fran, that was fascinating.
So the felt sense is perhaps the most reliable. And the way that I teach intuition, Jenny, is I use 3 prompts. And the first 2, I have an argument going in my head these days about which one is the most important. But the first one we'll start with, that we'll call the first one, is ask yourself, what do I have energy for? So one time in the middle of the night, there was a ruckus outside. My dog and I were going out to check on it. He did not have to be on a leash. He responded to voice commands. And I went to the front door, and normally he would be so excited that he could even run into the front door. I opened the front door and he stopped dead. And I tried to nudge him forward and he wouldn't go forward. And I was half asleep. And we were headed out to a light post about 20 feet in front of the house. And the next moment, lightning struck that light post. And we would have been right there. But he saved us. He saved our lives, possibly, because he had that bestial animal feeling in his body not to move forward. So this prompt helps us activate that full body knowing. What do I have energy for? And we can start to develop it by using it for optional activities. On the way home from work, should I stop at the dry cleaners or the grocery store? What do I have energy for? Now, sometimes you'll use it for something that's not optional. Do I go to the grocery store because I have to? Well, you don't have any energy for it. You go and, there's a car collision in the parking lot and you miss it. But if you hadn't gone, you wouldn't be around it, Mm-hmm. So the other prompt is, what is trying to happen here? Now, as women, we are highly tuned to tension in the room. When I was married, my husband and I worked at the same company for a little while. And we'd come out of a meeting and he'd say, that went well. And I'd say, no, it didn't. There was all this tension. We are very attuned to the happiness or unhappiness of the people present in the meeting. And that's what we want to be able to feel. What is trying to happen here? Are things trying to blow up, or are they trying to calm down? If they're trying to blow up, we don't want to put our energy into that. We're going to keep the lip buttoned, right? Or if you have a person you work with and they can go off on tangents and it can become the Bob Smith show, and everyone is hoping that nobody asks Bob Smith a question, but somebody says, Bob, where did you get the idea for this proposal? And you're like, oh no. So we want to use those 2 prompts interchangeably. What do I have energy for? And what is trying to happen here?
Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah. What do I have energy for and what is trying to happen here? And so then when we ask ourselves those questions and we get the answer, then what do we do?
Well, we have a choice at that moment, don't we? And we want to know, of course, whether our actions are optional or they are obligatory. And then we move forward with caution either way. We withdraw if it's optional. And if it's obligatory, we go ahead and see what happens, because maybe your soul, your guides have designed this for you to learn.
Yeah. The learning is always interesting. My belief is that we came here to learn some things, and then we're continuing to be faced with opportunities to learn. And until we do, we'll be given opportunities. And so the idea is, well, the only way out is through. You're going to either figure this out, or you're going to keep falling in the same hole. You're going to keep have the same situation come up. And so it's important to do the thing that shows that you've mastered this, or you've learned it. It's like you're taking a quiz, and do you always get that answer wrong? Do you always get that? Well, then you're going to keep being put in situations where you're going to be able to answer that question, and it's uncomfortable. But how is it for you, Fran, when you know what it is that you know, and then you're in a relationship with people, and not everybody knows this stuff. Not everybody operates in this way. Does it make it, like, how do you work with that? How do you handle that? Because I find that to be tricky.
So, golly, that's a big question. I'm dating someone right now, and I had to tell myself about 2 weeks ago, the only way forward, in my case, forward is through, because we come from different worlds, actually. And the responsibility of dating, I always feel greatly, because I don't really want to hurt anyone. I don't really want to participate in a train wreck for them or for me. But I could feel almost like I was Homer Simpson, like, must keep going, and find out where this might lead. And in the meantime, I have a number of rules now, or standards, whatever you want to call it, guidelines for relationships. And the very first one is they have to respect my intuition. If I think that we can't go to X, then we can't go to X. And I've had people who dismiss my intuition. In fact, he's probably going to listen to this podcast. So, hey.
Hi.
So the other rule is that we have to be able to deal with conflict. And, the first rule actually is the same as the second, because if I say I don't have a good feeling about going to X, we may have a conflict about that. And how are we going to work that out? I've had to have people trust me. And, the other day I realized, holy cow, I think I have saved about 4 or 5 people's lives in various situations. And we're not talking necessarily client situations. And all but one of them argued with me. So I want you to know out there, if I tell you it's time to go to the hospital, it's time to go to the hospital.
Yeah, I mean, this is really powerful to ponder and to consider. You and I are just meeting, Fran, but I'm remembering that this piece of my life was part of my life. For many years, I led a coach certification program. And it first came out, it was called Get Gutsy Coach Training School. I have a book called Get Gutsy. And my old podcast used to be called Get Gutsy. So we kind of went with that whole theme, and it was great. We trained so many coaches. And then I realized that I was working so much with intuition, and I wanted to evolve the program and really who it is that we're working with. And so we evolved it. And we were training intuitive coaches. That was what it was. Yes. And so it was, we ended that program a few years back. So it feels like it's part of my past, but it was such a powerful journey for me to claim that, like to claim that in the market. We called it Magic Makers Coach Certification. And it was such a powerful time in my life to do that and to really, you put your stake in the ground and you say, this is what we're doing. This is what this is about. Because do you believe that everybody has intuition and some listen and some don't? Or do you think that some people don't have the gift of intuition? What is your thought on that?
Well, first of all, intuition is just one way our brain works. Mm-hmm. So if you're driving away from your house and you go, okay, I got my cell phone, I put the dog out, I turn the lights off, or whatever it is, that's logic. Mm-hmm. If you drive away from the house and you go, I forgot my cell phone, that's intuition. Mm. So everyone is capable of it. But the intuition, according to this expert, runs on the same circuits that the emotions run on.
Okay.
So there are 4 people who do not have emotions. One of them is my ex-husband. Sorry.
Sociopaths? Are sociopaths in the category that don't have emotions, or what?
Well, we won't go there.
Okay, I'm just curious.
But accepting your emotions and learning to allow them to arise, peak, and dissipate, and beginning to work with the energy that's left underneath the emotion. So the emotions are like a beer. You're not going to drink the foam, but the foam is the display of the emotion, your display to get your attention. But underneath that is energy, either for peace and acceptance or for taking action. So there's so much more to developing your intuition. It makes us whole, Jenny.
Yeah.
It increases our capacity. What I tell my clients is, this isn't therapy, what I do.
Right.
It is about increasing our capacity. And my clients do increase their capacity, their ability to handle situations and feel guided and develop their confidence, despite how much stress is involved. This is what it makes us as close to bulletproof as we're going to get, Jenny.
Right. Exactly. And that's why I remember those years back when I said, that's what we're doing here. That's who this is for. I felt so brave and so bold to do so, but I know how much intuition had played a role in my life. And I think about those specific instances where I trusted that voice within. I often call it the voice. And what you mentioned earlier, like the feeling sense, is that what we would call clairsentience? Like we have clairsentience, clairaudience, clairvoyance, things like that.
Yes. I don't know that there is a clair for this felt sense. I call it the kinesthetic sense. Because there are feelings that are part of the felt sense. The feelings would be the emotions. And the kinesthetic sense is sort of the texture of the experience. So back to what is trying to happen here, the texture of tension in the room. Or if you've ever, I hate this feeling just thinking about it. If you've ever walked into a hospital room and you can feel that, but death is present. That is the kinesthetic sense. Or when you are called upon at a soul level to be a witness, and you can feel, as somebody might say, that ain't good when something's happening. There is a way that dread comes in. Now, intuition is always neutral. So if there is dread, the dread is going to follow the intuition, and let's not get them confused. And if I may tell your audience, if you've been highly analytical in your career, your life, in the way your brain works, you may end up having an intuition that is so followed by doubt and overanalysis that you have confused the two. So that's what I help people do, is to discover how their intuition works, how their intuition comes to them, so that they can begin to recognize it and then defend it against the doubts which come from the superego, the inner critic, the judge within.
Yes, yes. Being able to, differentiate between the two, because I think there's so many people who they're so familiar with the inner critic. That's what they almost believe the intuition is, because that's the voice that has been ever present, that often originated in our childhood home of origin, or people in power who said mean-spirited things to us or what have you. I wrote about that in my book, the difference. The light bulb went on for me when I went through coach training all those years ago, because I wasn't taught any of this in school. You were taught to memorize certain things. And then once I went out into my career, public relations, that's how our friend James and I connected, and just kept kind of shifting and evolving, because none of those initial career moves, they were interesting and I'm so grateful for them, but I knew it wasn't where I was supposed to hang out for the long haul. And I eventually discovered the field of coaching, and I learned about the inner critic, and wow. And we called it a gremlin. And then it was, and we have this inner voice, and they're not the same. And so that was when my life changed. And that's what you do in your work, Fran, and I do in my work in the way that I do. And it's so important for everyone tuning in, because I think the majority of the world, the vast majority of the world, they are identifying with the inner critic. They are letting the inner critic rule them, hold them hostage, all the things. And when we recognize that there is another voice, and often that voice, like you said, it's a felt sense. You feel something when you move into a room, you sense something that's going on. And when you can trust that, that's the key. It's like learning to trust that. And so it sounds like that's what you were just getting at, is that's what a lot of what you do with your clients is teaching them how to trust that.
Two more things. So the intuition can travel on any of the sensory channels. So you mentioned the clairs. Clair sentience is clear knowing. Clairaudience is clear hearing. Clairvoyance is clear seeing. Clairaudience is clear smelling. So I have all of the inner senses open. And the first time that I discovered that I had clairaudience, where you can smell, was I was working with a client on the phone, and I could smell cigarette smoke. And this person was a health maniac. So I thought, no. And remember, this is on the phone, and they were far away. And I said, are you smoking? And there was a long pause, and they said, well, because I respect you, I will tell you the truth. Yes. So the other thing, Jenny, is that the intuition is not rational. What that means is that any kind of reasoning for the intuitive sense does not precede the intuition. So if you're walking down the street and you get the feeling that you should walk to the other side of the street, you won't know why until Wile E. Coyote drops the anvil on the spot where you were. We cannot use rational thinking to unpack the intuition until after it takes place.
Yeah, right there. That's the kicker. And that takes courage. That takes courage to, I'm going to cross the street. I'm not going to get into this car. I am going to, whatever it is, I'm going to call this person. I don't know why. Okay. I'm doing it because you like my own journey of doing this. It's so interesting talking to you, especially because we have this connection that I'm going back to like my teenage years in college, and then my 20s when I was in New York. And that was when my intuition started really waking up. It was fascinating to me. And I'm remembering distinctly this one particular day, I worked in an office, a big, I think I might've mentioned on our last episode, but it's coming so clearly into me now, where I remember I was really struggling over the death of my sister. My sister died when I was a teenager, and it was right around the anniversary of her death. And I just remember thinking, I have to take time off. Like I need to take some time. I need room to grieve. I need room to process. And I never gave myself that gift when it initially happened. And I basically just told my boss, like, I got to take a half day off work. And what I did, and I had never done this before, is I went to get a manicure. I had gotten a gift certificate for, did like Secret Santa or something, little holiday gift exchange with my coworkers. And somebody gave me a gift certificate for this nail place. And so I go to the nail place and I pick my colors. They instructed me to, and I sit down, and the person who came over to do my nails, name tag Julie, that's my sister. And so it was like, the more that I did that, the more that I listened, even though I thought I'm going to get in trouble, I'm asking for time off like a day before I need to take the day. Like, we couldn't do that. It was such a high stress, high stakes environment. But I trusted that instead of the rational, logical that said, you can't do that. Like, that's not going to fly. That's not going to work. And I just kept trusting that. And I kept making these moves that on the external seemed wild or ridiculous, or how could that be? And I feel like you've done that too, Fran. That's why you teach what you do. That's why you embody what you do. And I know that people listening right now are taking this in and recognizing where they can do a better job, a more courageous job of letting the intuition guide, which is really the intuition's job.
I love it. And Jenny, is it okay? I sometimes will act as a medium.
Yes.
Session. May I tell you something?
I would love that.
Your sister feels like she's right over my left shoulder, and she is beaming at you. And she is saying something like, she's very proud of what you have done. And she feels like she could never have done what you have done, that she would love to have been able, but she was too scattered, too, her connection, obviously, because she passed away, and my condolences, Jenny. But she says that she was like this rickety vehicle that couldn't stay on track. She was scattered. She could not be directed like you have been in your life. She could not have stayed on track. Does that make sense for your sister?
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I actually have done some work with mediums and channelers in the past. And what they had told me as well is that she's like doing this work on the other side, and that she helps me. Like, I know this for sure. Like, she absolutely is she helps me. And I was always like, to that whole, like, I mean, she was very messy. Her room, we shared a room, her side of the room, you couldn't even see the floor. And I was always like super tidy and organized, and she was brilliant and bright, but we just lived differently. And what was fascinating is that I just know that I wouldn't be where I am today without her support, without her doing this alongside me. I feel very grateful for that. And she also has given me many signs through the years that what I do is enough. I had a history, and this is where my intuition like got my attention loud and clear, of overdoing, overexerting, overproving, over ambitioning, whatever. I just made up that word. But that has been a message that I've received from her and from my intuition to remind myself. And I think this is a great reminder for everyone tuning in too, is that we're enough. We're enough. You're never going to prove to yourself that you're everything that you won't give yourself permission to believe that you are right now. And so that was something that she has absolutely taught me with the way that she lived, and the way that, and this is so funny what's happening. I feel like this is the intuition. It's hilarious to me. Like, what's happening with my camera has never happened before on the conversation. So I'm just cracking up around this, that the camera is literally, I think my sister's like operating the camera right now, honestly, because it's moving and it's like animated and who the freak knows. The fact that my computer just shorted while you, Fran, were talking about the felt sense. This is what happens when you let your intuition guide you, is that the whole world becomes more animated. It's like you are living in 5D. It's
Yes.
comical. It's like really funny. It's interesting. Even the stuff that feels like heavy, you almost see the absurdity in it. Like you see, isn't this fascinating? And it makes life, which can sometimes feel brittle, which can sometimes feel like really hard and tough, you learn to enjoy it more, honestly.
Well, and I have to tell you, do you remember Lipton flow-through tea bags from a long time ago?
Yeah.
There's a relationship between you and your sister Julie that I have to say I've never felt before.
Mm.
She seems to be, as I said, right here,
Mm-hmm.
and her consciousness flows into yours
Yeah.
and through into what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And she gets to sort of do what you do, despite the fact that she could not have done that based on who she is.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so she is so, I don't know if it doesn't seem quite right that she helps you.
Mm.
She participates through you.
Ah, yes, yes. I love that. Yeah, absolutely. I feel
And
that.
she says, don't you worry, you're the boss. You're the one taking the risks.
I was the
And
older sister, and I was always the one on the stage. Like, if you know the movie Beaches, like anytime I see Beaches, I just cry hysterically because that was her and I. And Bette Midler was the one on the stage, and then it was Barbara Hershey who was not, and they were best friends. They weren't sisters, but they really had a sisterly relationship. And that song "Wind Beneath My Wings" played at my sister's funeral, and there's lyrics
oh, I
in
have goosebumps.
how you were the one, like I was the one on the stage and you were the one kind of behind the scenes. And so that's what I feel. I feel very much that she works with me in this work, and we need help, right? I mean, I don't want to carry this by myself. I want support from a team, seen and unseen. And I think that that's a powerful message for everyone tuning in, because we have ancestors, we have had those who've come before us, angels, guides, supports. You can have physical beings on your team. I have an incredible woman on my team, Miranda, who sets all this stuff up. I mean, I have other people on my team as well. And I think we have to remember that. We have to remember that, because this work can feel lonely at times, especially when you have these gifts and other people like, what is it that you do? They don't always understand it on the logical plane, but you know, and you know how powerful it is. And so when we have these incredible supports with us, again, seen and unseen, we can go much further, because we don't want to get sick. We don't want to burn out. We don't want to get to the point where we say, I don't want to do this anymore. I can't do this anymore because it just feels too hard. It feels too heavy. It feels too lonely. And so, Fran, I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your gifts today. This has been a powerful conversation. I knew it would be, and it has been. My intuition was spot on. It was spot on. Fran, where can people find out more about you? Where can they find you? Where do you want to guide them today?
So I'm on LinkedIn and TikTok
as
Fran Gallaher. My business is reallyflourish.com. That's my website and my business name.
Okay.
I am available especially through email. Through my business, you can go to my website, fran@reallyflourish.com. And my phone and texting is way better than voicemail. I can't even bring myself. I do a bad job of checking voicemail now.
I'm glad I'm not alone. Well, because sometimes too, because you feel that energy so deeply, and it's like, are you in a place to be able to take that in, to take in the words? And so it's good to know that too, for everybody to think about, like, how you're accessible to clients or potential clients in your world. Like, we can be out there, but also know that maybe we're predisposed to be better with the written word, like a text. I use a tool in my business called Voxer. I don't know if you know of it, Fran, but I love it.
I do.
Yeah. And what's cool with that, I think I sign up for like the paid version, which is, very affordable each year, to do an annual subscription. But if I get a voice memo, which I leave voice memos for clients. So I love to be able to speak things out because I communicate well that way. But if I receive a voice memo back and I'm just not in a state where I can take in someone's voice, then I will have it transcribed and I can read their words, which I think we have to know that, we're these intuitive souls and we operate on this interesting plane. And I want us all to do a great job of protecting ourselves because we need our energy, to your point, right, that you mentioned earlier. Like, what do I have the energy for? If we have burned all of our energy out in the way that we help, then we don't have energy to take care of ourselves. We don't have energy to think ahead. And I want us all to remember that we have these great tools out there, certainly that people can contact us, but the way that we use them so that we can be the best supports for the people in our world.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yes, but I would love to hear from your audience. And
Yes.
we do offer complimentary sessions.
Great.
For someone to get an idea of how I work. And I can make a difference for people in a very short period of time because of my intuition.
Yes. Yeah, I can feel that in you very much. And I'm so glad that you came on today. Thank you for sharing your story and your voice and your expertise with our Coach Magic audience. Everybody, get in touch with Fran. Fran, we'll put all those links. We will be posting this on my podcast itself in the next few days, and it goes on my website, and everyone will know how to get in touch with you. So Fran, thank you again for your energy and your love and your story, and for doing everything that you do. With your childhood that you have, you could have gone in many different directions, and I'm really glad and appreciative that you were able to take that and do something really powerful with it.
Jenny, I'm so grateful to you, and you are such a talented interviewer. Thank you very, very much. I just love how intuition showed up for us today. Thank you.
Really, like the technology was almost couldn't handle it. Like, what are we going to do? Like, literally what's happening, what happened with my computer shorting, and then my camera's like doing this really in and out thing. That has never happened to me before. And the other thing I want to share, Fran, and then we'll wrap. You're one of 7. Just last night, I finished reading the article this morning because I've been fascinated by Kieran Culkin because I loved his role in A Real Pain. If you haven't seen the movie, see it. He just won an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. I just did some research and found out more about his childhood. Obviously we knew a lot about Macaulay Culkin with Home Alone and this child actor, Wild Ride. There were 7 siblings, and they had a really tumultuous childhood. In fact, most of them are estranged from the father. And so I just found it really fascinating in how they went into, performance and acting by way of the father. He really kind of forced them into it. But I just wanted to share that with you. You might want to read a little bit about that family. And there was something with the 7 siblings. I thought, well, isn't that interesting? Because that's not always so common to have 7,
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up and reminding us that you can be broken and you can find wholeness.
Yes, absolutely. With how you choose to live your life, because we always have choice. We have choice, and let's make smart choices today. Thank you, Fran, and thank you everyone else for tuning in. This has been quite a ride. Jenny Fennick signing off for Coach Magic. I'll see you all again soon. Be well, everyone.